Everyone. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for tuning into our program today. Welcome to our three-part series. My name is Amr Amanullah. I'm now a second-year med student at Temple University. A little bit of background of what this is about. So last Friday, post-Juma, Bilal Bakai and I were talking about race relations and how specifically we have to talk about some very difficult conversations in the South Asian community. But not only showing solidarity with our Black brothers and sisters, but also trying to understand more about what they face being Black in America. With the the systemic injustices in our country and extremely tragic events that have been transpiring with Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, countless others, and now George Floyd. This is a topic being talked about in every household. We wanted to start, shedding some light on it. And before we start, I just wanted to say this is going to be a tough conversation to have, but we tend to shy away from these kinds of conversations, but they're definitely they're needed. So, inshallah, we'll get started. So today I'll be joined by Ustadh Saleh Clemons. He has a bachelor's degree in psychology and is now completing his master's in legal studies with a concentration in conflict resolution at the Washington University in St. Louis Law School. In 2013, Ustadh Clemons left the USA to go to Cairo in search of sacred knowledge, where he learned Arabic and Tajweed. He then traveled to Dar al-Mustafa Islamic Seminary in Dhahran, Yemen, where he completed a one-year intensive Islamic studies, learning various sciences in theology, spirituality, Islamic law, hadith, methodology, and dawah. In 2015, Ustadh Saleh returned to the USA, where he has worked with countless organizations creating holistic programs for social and emotional development among children and families in the nonprofit sector. So I'd like to now invite Ustadh Saleh Clemons. How you doing?
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much for coming on. Really excited to have you here. And, I was able to listen to your Juma, your khutbah, I think from June 5th. And now I'm really excited to actually get to talk to you and get a little bit of your experience. You had some very insightful comments in your khutbah. So, do you want to start off with me telling a little bit about yourself, or do you want to just jump into questions?
Bismillah, questions.
All right.
That question of starting off with yourself, you never know where to start. So Bismillah,
right.
I'll let you take the lead.
Cool. Okay, so I guess we can start off with something in general. Do you think the immigrant community understands your plight? Just given our audience is primarily South Asian Muslims.
So you start off with a fastball, 90 miles an hour, right down the right down the front. Huh? No, there's no better place to start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wa afdalu salatu wa taslim ala sayyidil mursalin nabiyina wa habibina wa shafiina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'a bi ihsan wa ba'd. That question hits home. It's just to make sure I understand the question correctly. I mean, it's just more so just about the ability of the immigrant community to kind of understand the plight of, you could say, the Black individual that's going through this right now. Essentially, yes?
Yes.
Yeah? How could the immigrant community understand? I think it's safe to say that there is no other people, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And I'm not saying this to have some kind of victimized mentality approach to it. I am a Black man in America, born Black, and I will die Black, inshallah. But there really is kind of no other people that's in the world where they are not able to collectively point to their lineage. They don't know where they're from. There's been slavery has existed in other places. Systemic injustice, enacted through laws from a tyrannical government or what have you have existed in other places and continue to exist in other places. But when you boil down for that question, that you have a collective group of people, and when I would go travels, in the Middle East or wherever.
Sorry, Ustadh. Is it possible for you to speak up? I think some of our audience members are saying it's a little bit harder to understand you. I think it's just because of volume.
Okay, let me see if I can. How's this?
Oh, there we go. And I think we can hear you now.
You can hear me now?
I think that sounds a lot better than before.
Okay, Bismillah.
All right, there you go.
Just keep me updated on that because my technological stuff, mashallah. Anyways, but I was saying that how could the immigrant community understand? And I'm not saying that in terms of you should understand. You can't understand because the Black American doesn't even understand. Where are you from, Amir?
My family's from India.
Ask me the same question.
Where are you from?
I don't know.
Right.
Therein lies.
Right.
How can you You can't.
Right.
I can't say Africa. Why?
Right.
Why can't I say Africa? Africa is a continent that has more countries and languages in it than most of the entire any other continent on Earth. Can't pinpoint Africa. Can't pinpoint. Well, if I just go so far back in my lineage, the farthest I can go back is a great grandfather who was a runaway slave from Florida. I know nothing before that.
Right.
I know very little of my family history. So it's more so how can you understand the plight of the African American when the African American can't really articulate the plight, him or herself. And
right.
it's an emotion, it's a feeling, it's generational trauma that has built for 450 plus years.
Right.
And it's something that's ingrained within our DNA. It's not something it's spoken, but it's an existence that's felt.
Right.
Can people be empathetic? Sure, but understand. It's hard pressed to find any other kind of people on earth that have that same reality. That
right.
one of the when we bring it into Islam, because obviously, this is a discussion in context with the Muslim community, right? And I remember I spoke about this before, and some of my other brothers, Black brothers, have spoken about this before at different gatherings, both here and abroad as well. Speaking to the fact that, losing my train of thought, the fact that one of the maqasid of Islam, one of the maqasid of Sharia, one of the principles and objectives of the Sharia, the scholars outline about 5, and there's some differences there. But one of the maqasid and one of the principles of the Sharia is preservation of lineage. It's preservation of lineage. And that's of the utmost importance, meaning that our rules and laws of Islam go to these maqasid, go to these principles and objectives. Some of them also know preservation of life, preservation of lineage, things like that, preservation of property rights, things like that. But lineage was one of them. And so what does it say? That fundamentally there is a large swath of individuals who can't even preserve one of the principal foundations from their religion because they don't have any kind of understanding. They don't have an understanding. There's no way to trace that back, except for maybe a lucky few that are able to piece some things together and navigate through the history. But you have a large community of people that are cut off from a fundamental aspect of the Sharia, a fundamental aspect of their religion, a fundamental aspect of them being a human being. It's just completely cut off with no chance to even understand or find out.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think you make some very, very deep, very important points. I can tell you as a South Asian, people coming from Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, we'll talk about our family back home, partition and talk about British. We can at least trace it back. But when you look at the Black experience, especially the African American experience, and you look at just what they did with stripping them dignity, basically just humanity. I mean, it is. If you really think about it,
you're making somebody not human. I mean, literally, right. It was in the Constitution of this country that right. Somebody like me wasn't even 3/5 of a man.
Right.
You're literally taking the humanity away from somebody. Go ahead. Right. I'm sorry, I cut you off. But Please
No, no,
excuse
no,
me
no,
in advance for any times
no.
I cut you off.
You,
La ilaha illallah.
no worries. And I was reflecting. There was a actually a couple of days ago. I was watching his video about. I think it was. I can't remember the name of the individual, but it really hit home because he was I think 15-year-old. I think he was from Senegal, and he was studying. And he's basically one of the you might know. He's one of the. He basically was taken as he was studying the Quran. I think he was going for. He's basically essentially kind of what you did, where you're becoming a scholar in a certain aspect, and he was basically taken, right, and brought here to America. And if you look at what his life was back in Senegal, to what they did here, I mean, it is. You just have to think about it. And you're like, how does someone do this to somebody, right? And I mean, that individual, I remember, I think he was trying to escape in Georgia. If I remember correctly, whoever founded the Georgia colony, he saw a letter that he wrote to his father in Arabic, and he was really moved by it, and he freed him and sent him back he sent him to Britain, where he ended up becoming scholar, conversing with not only Jewish scholars but most with Christian scholars. And he was basically seen as somebody who was, I mean, he was like you and me, just an intelligent human being. And what they did is just so wrong. And I think what happens is that South Asians, we think about we've only been in this country for 40, 50 years, and going back to like the 65 Civil Rights Act, and there's so much more behind the history of America. And I think I was telling my dad this, is that we sit here, we memorize these in grade school, memorize this state and this trade, but we don't ask the fundamental question of how and why could someone do this to a group of people,
We live in a country that it's built off of, and I'm not just going to say slavery, because we know the sense of slavery in Islam and how Islam came to rectify slavery. Can I say this?
I'm sorry, I don't want to stop. I don't want to cut you off, but I think the audience is saying that when you were holding the AirPods in near your mouth, I think it was easier to understand.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Bismillah. Kind of like, is this better to understand?
I can hear you better now.
Okay, I'll just keep my hand here. Bismillah, khalas. Don't go to CVS and buy your AirPods. So, anyways, so Bismillah. But when you're speaking about this country, right? The country, the United States of America, was built off of the stripping of the humanity of an entire group of people, African slaves coming across the transatlantic slave trade, right? But it's also built off of the genocide. We don't talk enough about that. Native Americans, real Americans. It's genocide. We live in a country built off of genocide.
Right.
We live in a country built off of the entire stripping away of humanity. And it's not just, stripping away of humanity. It sounds it sounds poetic in a sense, like a dark poem. But you have people that are brought naked across a months long journey, malnourished, famine, stacked on top of each other, worse than any kind of cattle, completely naked, defecating, urinating, whatever it is upon one another. This is something that's recorded. And then they're brought to the country. Right? This is what's running through the DNA of the African American. Right? And they come to the country. And you have babies that are ripped away from mothers. You have fathers that are separated from their families. You have sons that are auctioned off, and daughters that are sold as sexual slaves and what have you. You have complete families that are ripped apart. You have a complete indoctrination. Not only, many of the, I don't know in my history, do I have Muslims in my history? Because it can be up to maybe about 30% of the slaves that came to the United States were Muslim. And scholars differ according to the number. Some say maybe about 20% or 30, some say even as high as maybe 50%. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. But not only do you have your religion, your And religion, when it's not just a box that we check, right? We know in Islam, you and I know that in Islam,
Right.
Deen is not just religion. Deen is the entire essence of how you are supposed to be and who
Right.
you are in relation to your creator, subhanahu wa ta'ala, right?
Right.
And so you have, not only is that taken away from you, right, to your belief, but you're indoctrinated and humiliated in such a way that you're made to believe that the new religion you're supposed to follow, Christianity, right? That then you're supposed to worship a white depiction of Jesus who's the same color and same look and same blonde hair and blue eyes and everything that your oppressor, your slave master, your slave trader looks as well. Could you that psychological horror that you're made to worship your oppressor, not just not just any whatever in outward manifestations, but your inward belief is supposed to be oriented towards that.
Right.
So it's not just oppression in regards to the whips, the chains, the cotton fields, the textile factories in the north, whatever it is, but it's the inward psychological trauma and oppression that you could even say it was even worse.
Right.
And that's something that, you have that continue on from the 1600s, the 1700s, the 1800s. These are, the United States has only been in existence for less than 300 years in terms of an actual, country. So you have these systems that are already in place and going on longer than we know the United States has been in existence already.
Right.
And so all of that plays in the backdrop. And then you're leading to, okay, emancipation, right?
Right.
In 1865. But what was promised to the black man and black woman, 40 acres and a mule, etc., like that, it never came. And so you just have now these people that are dumped. And what happens to people when they're completely, we already set the background, but the background is slaves. And so you just have people that are just dumped on society, that are illiterate, that are uneducated, that have no resources, that have no societal standing. And so you have a de facto slavery anyways that happens, sharecropping, or just what became, in the north with textile factories and whatnot. And yeah, they're employed, but it's really like a new kind of slave form that happened with immigrant communities as well as the black man as well. And you have legal systems, Jim Crow laws, and et cetera, that exist all the way through halfway through the 1900s. My parents lived through it. My parents were born in that. My mother talks to me, when she's 5, and civil rights protests, things like that. And so this isn't something that's a long time ago. I think, I've had conversations with those in like the immigrant community, right? Allah bless them. And
and unfortunately, when you bring up Jim Crow, last summer I read the book was basically the new Jim Crow. And if you look at, the criminal justice system as it is today, when you're talking about, fathers were ripped away, still is, it's what it is, right? I mean, it's just, under the guise of the legal system, but, it's like, that's something we really got to talk about. It's something I think a lot of people are protesting. They're trying to shed light on these kinds of issues that, they need reform.
When you go to the amendment that abolishes slavery, everybody, you can look it up on Google. When it mentions except during imprisonment. It abolishes slavery except in cases of imprisonment. And so this is something that's still actively within our Constitution of our country. And so what we've seen in these past 2 weeks, to make it a little more relevant, right? I want to make sure you can still hear me okay?
Right. Yep. Okay.
What we've seen in these past 2 weeks.
Sorry, you know what? I'm hearing, hold it in your hand.
I still got to do
it. It was better, yeah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, walillahi alhamd. It'll be a workout, bismillah. But what we've seen in the past 2 weeks.
Or I think I'm hearing, just take it out and hold it near your mouth if you can. I don't. Maybe
take it out and hold it in my mouth like this.
A little bit close, a little bit farther away. A little farther away.
A little bit farther away.
Yeah.
Oh man, we're gonna be messing around all night. Alhamdulillah. All right, just give me thumbs up, thumbs down, depending on how it goes. Bismillah. But you know what we've seen in these past 2 weeks? This is nothing new, right? Not for me. To be quite honest, I haven't been angry in the past 2 weeks. I haven't been angry as a result of the killing of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd. I haven't been angry because I'm tired. Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Philando Castile, Eric Garner, all these names. You can rattle them off. Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice. And it's not just these one-off incidences of police brutality, that we see that float across the media.
Right.
And it's, I've had conversations with the immigrant community, folks in the immigrant community. And I don't want to paint, obviously, everybody in the immigrant community with one brush. Everybody's different. Obviously, we're having this conversation, right?
Right.
But, conversations come like, the United States is a land of opportunity. Just build just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's supposed to be the American model, right? Go forward with the American dream, what have you like that. Or, why you all do this? Why don't you just be like, Chinese, those in the Chinese or in the Asian community and, just send your kids to school to be doctors and lawyers or whatever like that. And then they just pull up, your parents work, maybe in like food restaurants or whatever like that. I'm just talking about stereotypes that that have come across in these conversations or what have you. But the backdrop of these 400 plus years in an entire system, when we speak about the system, we're talking about the political framework of the country, mixed in with the economic framework, mixed in with the educational framework, mixed in with healthcare. This is the system, the criminal justice framework. This is the system. When people talk about turning over the system, it's not about the police brutality necessarily. Police brutality is just an offshoot of it. It's a manifestation of it, kind of like the brute force that quells it, that puts it down. 99% of the cops are good men and good women. 90% of the cops, good men and good women. I know plenty of them. But what fuels it, what drives it, what enforces the enforcers? Educational disparities, economic disparities that go far beyond just pulling yourself by the bootstraps. Look at so-and-so, they became a PhD, what have you like that. Look at Dr. Ben Carson. Look at whatever other black figures. Look at Barack Obama. This is the signal and race. It's much bigger than that. Much, much bigger than that. Letting out just a couple of apples doesn't mean, and saying that, look, this is a good apple, doesn't mean that the rest of the batch is good. That the rest of the batch isn't spoiled.
Really hearing that we can't hear you.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop using these.
Then just, I guess, check if the bottom isn't muted again for some reason.
So no, I'm just going straight speaker. How's this?
Okay. No, it's perfect.
Yeah, that's what I was that's what I was gonna start to do in the beginning, but alhamdulillah, let me turn these things off just in case it switches back over or something. All right, khalas. So note to everybody, don't get your AirPods at CVS again. Bismillah. So anyways, alhamdulillah. So you have the educational disparities, the economic disparities, the healthcare disparities, these things. And it's not just, when you're coming from the 60s, and yes, you're given the rights to vote, you're given these kind of things. But what happened, in the 60s, following Jim Crow, following the right to vote, following the civil rights movement? What happened? You had a situation where white people moved from the cities and left what? And left just the blacks in there. And then what happens after that? Gerrymandering, redlining districts, taking away the political power. What doesn't matter that you have a right to vote when your political power, when you can just change the system and your political power is just a complete moot point? What does it matter to go vote when you don't really have any true control over who's representing you in Congress? Because they can just change some arbitrary lines, which has happened and continues to happen, and just change arbitrary lines and removes your ability. What does it matter? What does it matter to, now you can have integrated public schools? What does it matter when
You set up economic systems through SAT testing. And you give money to the schools that perform well. You take away money from the schools that do poorly. What kind of sense is that?
Right. And then on top of the schools are getting, right? Schools are getting based on taxes, like property taxes and whatnot.
And property taxes, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
All of these things.
Yeah.
What does it matter? So yes, you might see the one, the two, the three, or the athletes or the celebrities that quote unquote make it.
Right.
What are they making? Material possession?
Right.
And bring it back to the dean. What are you, material possession? Because the real oppression isn't these structural systems. That's not the pain that I've been feeling. I haven't been angry, but I've been feeling pain and hurt. And it's not because, alhamdulillah, I'm born, in this community. I wasn't Muslim, for my life growing up. I converted a little over 10 years ago. And I never met a Muslim, alhamdulillah. I never met a Muslim in my life growing up. I went to Arcola Middle School. I went to Thacton High School. These are all within the Collegeville, Norristown, Audubon area, right? But it's not just because, oh yes, I grew up in a middle class family. I went to, eventually went to private school. I went to college. I got my degrees, et cetera, like that. People say, oh, you're fine.
Right.
So the question isn't about the outward. That's the easy part. That's what we see with the Uyghur Muslims, in China, or the Burma Muslims in Burma, or, what's going on right now in India as well with the Modi regime, right? In Kashmir as well. That outward form of person, that's easy. That's just brute force. Put to psychologically torment and oppress somebody and have that stay within the system. That's what generational trauma is about.
Right. That's
what really is the torment. So you see the rioters, right, and the looters. Unquote. Looting is haram. Mutlaq. Anybody that I really despise when I see, especially non-book Muslims, try to justify it. Looting. No, that's, you don't commit. If you're being called to do haram action, you're just working with the devil at that point. So you're contributing to the problem. But I understand the pain of those who are just taking, because it's that constant state and feeling of deprivation. You always feel like you need to get something because you have nothing.
Right.
You riot because you have these emotions that have built up for generations and that have been passed down. The stress has been passed down. This is something scientifically proven, in fact, within psychological research. Stress, trauma, it gets passed down through generations.
Right.
And so all of this is fueling folks, fueling Black folks, all of these things. And so, do we condone criminal behavior? No. But I'll be honest with you when I say that I feel the same exact emotions. I feel those same exact emotions that everybody else feels. That I always have to prove myself. Why do I have to keep mentioning, okay, I say where I'm from the United States, but where are you really from? Why do I have to keep proving this? Why am I always in this constant state of deprivation? As if I'm always in a position of being less, and I have to prove that. I have to keep proving my humanity. I'm talking specifically the immigrant community, right?
Right.
But where are you really from? I can't tell you how many times I've heard that question in the United States and abroad.
Right.
But where are you really from? Hey, right. Do you want a history lesson? Where are you really from? Yeah. That question, it shakes me. It shakes me.
Yeah.
And it brings me to the point that I want to cry. Because how do I begin to explain to you where I'm really from?
Right.
I couldn't even tell you. Do I discuss about, perhaps my ancestors being raped by slave masters? Do I talk about, family members being killed or whatever, in the street or what have you? Do I tell you about, perhaps forefathers being castrated, burned at the stake, or being tarred and feathered? Right. Where do I begin to even tell you where I'm from? That's where I'm from.
Yeah.
That injustice, that abuse. And so, what I see right now, I feel all the feeling. This is the same movie that has played over and over again.
Yep.
This is a movie that has been playing over 400 years. I have no faith. I have no faith in, and actually, this is something that another brother by the name of he's well known, Ibn Ali Miller, alhamdulillah, he mentioned that he has no faith in the system ever changing. I have no faith in these protests. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I care about my feelings and the feelings of my people. Healing the hurt, bringing people to God, subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what I have faith in. I have faith in God. I have nothing else. Yes, I have a good job in New York City. Yes, whatever like that. When I say I have nothing, I mean, like, what does it matter?
Right.
All these material possessions, when you always have to be in a constant state of proving your humanity.
Yeah.
Proving where you're from. Proving that, oh, where did you learn Arabic? Just these kinds of things.
Yeah. No,
dressing how I'm dressing right now, talking to you in Arabic, and you ask me, "Are you really Muslim?" I say, I say, "Assalamu alaikum, kayfa al-hal, bikhair, walhamdulillah, kayfa haluka," and all these things. Wearing a kufi, but you're here dressed like my boss, and you're asking me if I'm Muslim.
Yeah, no, you make great points. I mean, I think I'm really moved by your just account and just being raw and real. I think that's what we need to hear. Because we don't know, we'll never know what it's like to be Black in America, especially being descendants of slaves and what happened in the history. But this is kind of a segue to my next question. I think a very important question is that, what can we do as immigrant communities to foster an environment of greater racial inclusivity, just in massages, and also just being an ally to our Black brothers and sisters, both Muslim and non-Muslim.
Step back. Stop trying. And I'm being serious.
Right.
Stop trying. Let Black people have this. Let us have this. We, had a bit of a, excuse me. We had a bit of a discussion, right, before this, and
right.
My feelings about the title
right.
of the event, right? Name to the face.
Right.
Things like that. Obviously, it's not any fault of yours or anything such as that, or anybody else. Organizing the event. It's a beautiful endeavor, noble intentions, alhamdulillah. But even things like that, being able to claim even how something is, a name of an event that we're participating in to educate on or something like that.
Right.
Like that's that. It's maybe from a different perspective, from somebody else's perspective, it doesn't seem like it's something.
Right.
But for me, with the backdrop, with the current history, with the reoccurring trauma, this reoccurring movie that plays over and over and over again, I see that and I say to myself, what is this? Where's my say? Where's my voice? Yes, I'm coming to speak, but where's it? Because it's just something that's just so I can't even, define what I'm speaking, And it's just another thing where I have to, this power that's being dangled in front of me that I could never truly obtain. I've had recent discussions with other folks trying to hold maybe, Black sensitivity type spaces in these past 2 weeks. Not even being able to define how the event is going to go. Who are you to tell me? I'm talking, these are immigrant folks. Who are you to tell me how to conduct this event? How to conduct and to reach people at this time? Do we go to our Palestinian brothers and sisters and define to them how they should feel we should react towards the discriminatory policies and systemic injustice that goes on there in Palestine and Philistine? No. No. And anywhere else. But yet, it always seems like, and I say that obviously with, subjectively. I say this with no objective measure, so I preface it with that. But it seems like the feeling is that Black people were just, everything's just fair game with us. Even the culture that we create for ourselves, hip hop culture or what have you, is something that just gets co-opted and just used. And that's Elvis Presley, and that's not his original. He's the quote unquote king of rock, and he has the most albums sold, blah blah blah, whatever like that. But even his sound is not original. That comes from Black rock stars that existed before him. So we have nothing for ourselves truly. Even if you give the weight of the world in our hands and jewels and diamonds or what have you. You have the hip hop artist that's rocking his gold chain. He has nothing. And I'm not even saying because he doesn't have Allah. I'm not even saying it because of that. But because ultimately the power is still being controlled by somebody else. I'm not pointing up high, I'm pointing like organizational structure, not to Allah. Right? There's always somebody at the strings. This is like what happened with in Black Wall Street in Tulsa during when it was burned down, and in Rosewood as well. You have these places that were complete Black enterprises, that were completely stores that were Black owned, residences, houses, etc., booming economies that is completely Black owned, and they were burned by rioters, Ku Klux Klan members, etc. Like, you can never have something for yourself. No matter what record label you're signed to, you're never really in true control. Any athlete that you don't own the team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have the $100 million contract, but what does that compare to the 80-year-old billion-plus owner that still calls you, like the young lady's nappy-headed, bad word, or still, calls you thugs, like Bob McNair of the Houston Texans? What does it matter?
The Clippers owner from a couple years ago.
Or the Clippers owner, yes,
right.
Exactly. I forgot his name, but yeah, the Clippers owner. I was thinking then Houston Texans with their owner as well. What does it matter when ultimately that it's just worse is that you're given that illusion of control and power. Really, that's what, and we know this world, this hayatul dunya, this light, this worldly life, this ephemeral world is all an illusion. It's all an illusion. And so the oppression of itself, you say, how are you impressed that you have LeBron James, whatever, speaking of house, he oppressed. He's LeBron James. He's 6'9", 280. And who's going to discriminate against him? But it's not about what's in the hand. But it's a systemic oppression that exists inside and up here.
Right.
That is what's being fought against. That's why that phone call by Amy Cooper, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide her to Islam and to ease her heart and her soul and guide her, inshallah ta'ala. Allah subhanahu, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to aid your brothers, whether they are the oppressors or the oppressed. And it's not from Islam to pray against cancel culture. Is not from Islam. That is clear cut. I say that with what my teachers have directly said to me, and there's no concept of cancel culture within Islam. We pray for people who, even if they're the oppressors. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, or the companions asked, okay, we understand in regards to the oppressed, but how do we assist our brothers who are oppressors? It's by helping them against themselves. And pray for your oppressor. And that's what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did.
Yeah.
Whether it was leaving from Ta'if or after the Battle of Uhud, it is very clear in the Sirah, very clear in the Sunnah of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what he did. This is the way of the Muslim, right? And so
you can look back to the story of Musa alayhi salam, and even though Allah knew that Pharaoh was
yes,
you basically not going to go anywhere, but even Allah said speak to Pharaoh gently, even basically Pharaoh was basically the example of somebody who's so far gone. Even then, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that don't. It's pretty much just saying that you don't just give up on somebody, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. This is a great example. Alhamdulillah, it's a great example. Right. And so with the question of what, so that's all to say. Like with this question of what can communities do? It shouldn't take the entire country being erupt in racial protests for us to have a conversation.
Yeah, you should have been happening
because
before that.
Well, because for me, this ain't new. This ain't new. This pain that I feel is not new.
Right.
It's not new. It's just gonna keep going. And my only focus is just trying to bring myself and praying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can use me as a vehicle, and my other brothers and sisters, you and everybody else, to just bring people to Allah. Because when I was saying that we have nothing, when you're at the point where you just say you have nothing, you can only bring yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it. If you have Allah, you have everything. If you have Allah, you have everything. And so when it comes to how can immigrant communities be an ally to, specifically we'll just say Black Muslims, and even Black non-Muslims as well, call people to God. Call people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't racially inclusive masajid or what have you, or third spaces. Just be Muslim. Just be Muslim as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded us to be, as Allah Azza wa Jal commands us to be. And that'll take care of itself. We establish ourselves upon taqwa. We establish ourselves upon piety. A beautiful example, authentic hadith. Abu Dhar, radiallahu anhu, great Sahabi. He was in a discussion with Sayyidina Bilal, radiallahu anhu. And he called Sayyidina Bilal, radiallahu anhu, son of a black mother. Literally, quite literally, son of a black mother. Sayyidina Bilal, radiallahu anhu, became angry, but he didn't retaliate his anger. He went to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and obviously complained to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam became so irate. I'm not going to say irate, that would be inappropriate. Became angry, a justified, righteous type of anger. And when Abu Dhar, now this is the thing. Because a lot of times we go to the focus of the hadith. The end of the hadith finishes with Abu Dhar commanding Bilal to step on his face and saying, he puts his face on the dirt and says, you need to step on my face. I'm sorry. And he's apologizing in this way. And then Sayyidina Bilal picks him up, radiallahu anhu, and says that this is a face that says, La ilaha illallah, is the face that needs to be honored, and kisses him on the cheek. But before that, Abu Dhar already changed. Because once he found out that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was angry, it was automatic. Hubbullah wa li rasulihi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, love for God and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You do that, we do that. That will take care of racism. Even when you make mistakes, that'll take care of it. As Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as the foundation, that's how inclusive spaces can be built, by not focusing on the outward, but focusing on what's inside. We always quote the ayah in Surah Al-Ra'd. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't change the condition of the people until He changes the condition within themselves. We repeat this ayah, but we don't really actually implement it. You have to change, not you, but we have to change what is within ourselves if we want the conditions around us to be changed. Allah said it. There's no other ayah that goes against it. And so, no. We take away police. Now they're calling for defunding of police, whatever like that. Even if they did that, what's that going to change? It's not about the outward. It's never about the outward. It's never about what we see. It's not, the system, when we talk about, it's not about just the criminal justice sector. It's not about it, but it's about what fuels it. What fuels it comes from inside. And when people don't have that connection to God, then they're just left with the illusions, and they play tricks with the illusions. That's white supremacy. It's just tricks and the illusions. So the way to defeat white supremacy, battle against white supremacy, battle against implicit bias and racism that exists, from the Amy Coopers of the world, from the aunties and uncles who, would question me where I'm from and, not believe that I was really Muslim. From my Muslim Student Association friends from 10 years ago when I first converted, that would advise me, you should call the adhan because Bilal was black and he called the adhan, not realizing their statements.
Right.
Not realizing that when they're saying, jokes about, liking certain things from hip hop or whatever like that, that's extremely hurtful to me. Not from like a snowflake, no, not from that. But it's from like, can I just have something that's mine? I'm not here trying to claim biryani as mine or whatever. I like it. I'm not trying to claim it as mine.
Right.
Can I just have something that's just me? That's just mine. That's just me. That's for me, for my people. Can I just have something? And it's just originally with us and it's attributed to us, as opposed to our voices continuously being co-opted. I cannot stand. And I told some local community this, and alhamdulillah, we had a beautiful conversation. When I'm speaking for me as Saleh Clemons, black man in the United States. I cannot stand right now when I see non-black Muslims trying to speak up on my behalf. It drives me crazy. Not drives me crazy, excuse me. It's just, this is not your time. I have yet to see anything across any social media feeds that mention anything about the Warthi Muhammad community. Black Sunni community that came from the falsehoods of the Nation of Islam. And Imam Warathuddin Muhammad, the son of Elijah Muhammad, who claimed to be the Rasul or whatever, that he is responsible for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people going from darkness and dalal and from being astray into Sunni practicing Islam. All in the 70s, just like that. Imam Siraj wa Hajj, obviously a great example. And the likes of him. Obviously, Imam Malik al-Hajj al-Shabazz, or Brother Malcolm X, as we know. And that's even actually another thing on the flyer, right, for the event. Excuse me. There's things like this.
Right.
About falling back, because that picture of Malcolm that's used on the flyer, that's a picture of him in the Nation of Islam. Yeah, on this ring, that's the ring of the Nation of Islam. There was not even a dignifying picture of him because he wasn't a true believer at that point yet. It's those kind of things. It's like, can I just have this? Can I just have something? Can I just be something? Right. Can I just be me? James Baldwin, he said in an interview, James Baldwin is a famous Black American writer, poet, author, etc. In the 50s, 60s. He said that he was asked by the interviewer, what do you think a white man sees when he sees you? And he said, I don't know what he sees when he sees me, but I know it's not me. And so those phone calls from the Amy Coopers of the world, or the comments made by well-intended, college friends, aunties and uncles of the world, both of the Arab, Pakistani, or whatever communities. Sure, it's well-meaning, but sure, it's well-meaning, but just, can I have something for me? Can you see me? Can you just see me for who I am? Not what you think for me to be. And so I'm not going to the ICNA relief marriage part of the convention and being turned away from 30 families because I'm Black. Literally telling me because I'm Black. You're not good enough for our daughter. The solution is not just to khalas, we intermarry. No, the solution is being Muslim, following Islam, loving Allah and His Prophet ﷺ, and living a life in which you could imagine Rasulullah ﷺ, how he's acting to you. In Christianity, when I was growing up, they used to have like the WWJD wrists, whatever.
What would Jesus do?
Yeah. What would Jesus do? So that. Now, we shouldn't do that as Muslims, because then it would be WWMD, which would be weapons of mass destruction, which that would be very bad. Especially, we should not do that. But we do need to ask, what would Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam do? Or how would he feel? How would he react? And that's falling back and letting Black people have this moment, and letting the Black leaders lead. There's plenty of them. And just being Muslim and that, and using that by allowing us to do so, using that to establish bonds and relationships. And so when this fizzles out in 2 weeks or whenever it is, and life goes back to normal until the next,
people stop posting
until the
yep. Right. Then when people stop posting the hashtag for the next few weeks,
exactly.
Right.
And the media feels like, okay, let's divert the world's attention on something else now that we continue to set things up for Dajjal, because that's what's going on in the background right now. And don't make no mistakes. All this is preparation for it. These are all the works of Iblis and his armies in preparation for Dajjal. That's all this is right now. All these things, it's just distractions for that. Iblis's number one goal is just to take you away from the remembrance of Allah. And so if we were to have this conversation and we weren't having the remembrance of Allah, and maybe even, yes, in the UK, they're pulling down statues of slave traders. And, maybe we fund the police departments. We change the economics. The police don't care about none of that. All he cares about is if we don't remember Allah. And so if we're out there on the streets protesting, and we're not bringing the remembrance of Allah, we're just playing into the devil's game.
Right.
All this is going on in the background. We need to bring people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Khalas, that's it.
Right.
That's it. That's all we have. That's all we have. That's all we can have. Bismillah. I'm sorry.
No. I think I had other questions for you, but honestly, I think you summed it up perfectly. And I think thank you so much for coming on today. You really brought insights that I think many from the South Asian community didn't necessarily, have. They were thinking, okay, well, they're seeing protests on TVs and like, oh, that's what we should do. But actually hearing from his Black brother, knowing, what can we do? I think, ultimately what you said, that's awesome. Oh, and I think, I think one way we can conclude here is that maybe if you can lead us in a dua to, remember the Prophet, look at him as the best role model for us, and remember Allah. Subhanahu
wa ta'ala. In a dua, you say?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to conclude.
Ya Allah. Allahu Allah. Allahu Allah. Allahu Allah. It hurts, Ya Rab. Whether we're black, brown, white, or what have you, it hurts. Fanta Shafi. You are the one who heals. Ya Rab, we feel anger. Ya Rab, we feel hurt. Ya Rab, we feel in pain. Ya Rabbuna al-Kareem, we're confused. We live in the age in which your Prophet Muhammad ﷺ predicted that in the last days, that truth would become falsehood and falsehood would become truth, and people would not have the ability to know the difference between the two. And so we make the dua to you, Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Rahman Rahimeen, that you make the truth as it is, truth, and that you make falsehood as it is, false in our eyes, and grant us the wisdom, the serenity, and the beauty, and the knowledge to be able to distinguish between the two, Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Rahman Rahimeen. Oh Allah, hearts are hurting. Hearts are hurting. Hearts are hurting, Ya Rab. People are hurting, Ya Rab. All across this planet, Ya Rab. Whether they be our black brothers and sisters in the United States, whether they be our brothers and sisters in Philistine, brothers and sisters in the Central African Republic, our sisters in the Democratic Republic of the Congo being raped, whether they be our brothers and sisters in India suffering at the hands of a tyrant, whether they be our brothers and sisters in China, whether they be our brothers and sisters in Burma, our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan that still suffers, whether they be our brothers and sisters in every single land, Ya Rab, that suffers due to the tricks and the plots of the devils and the shayateen, Ya Rab. We ask that you be with them. We ask that you be their comfort when they feel they have no comfort. We ask that you be their guide when they feel lost. We ask that you be their companion when they feel alone. We ask that you bring them happiness when they feel depressed. We ask that you be their hope when they're constantly surrounded in their state of fear. We ask that you, oh God, be sufficient for us. Because when you pull back the tapestry of the illusions of this world, we realize that it's just nothing. We know that your Prophet ﷺ said that if this world meant anything to you, the weight of a wing of a mosquito, that you wouldn't give a non-believer a drink of water from it. So, Ya Rabb, allow us to come to you, whether it be a handspan, and we know that you then come in arm's length. Whether it be an arm's length, and then we know that you come to us walking. Whether we come to you walking, and then you come to us running, Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Rahman Rahim, as your Prophet ﷺ said, just help us to come to you. Help us to recognize the beauty that you created us with, the ahsani taqweem that you created us with, Ya Rab. We ask that you allow us to actualize that, both inwardly and outwardly, Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Rahman Rahim. Ya Rab, we ask that you remove the oppression from remove the oppression of the oppressors, that you change out the oppressors for righteous people to be in their place, that you change the outward systemic injustices that exist both within the United States and elsewhere in the world, Ya Rab. We know that this place isn't Jannah, Ya Rab. We know that this place isn't paradise. We know that this world is not heaven, but Ya Rab, it doesn't mean that we don't ask you to remove these things from us, Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Rahman Rahim, Ya Allah. We still ask for you to make it easy for the people, that you give us the best in this life and the best in the hereafter, Ya Allah. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Oh Allah, give us the best within this life, the best in removing these implicit biases, these injustices, these systems that keep continuously putting our people down. آتنا في الدنيا وآتنا في الآخرة حسنة, and give us what's best in the next life. That even in our struggle and in our fight against these systemic injustices, Ya Rab, that you don't allow us to divert our gaze from the true prize, the prize of being in your Jannah, the prize of drinking at the hands of your blessed Prophet ﷺ at his hawd, the prize of gazing at your wajh al-kareem, at your blessed countenance, your blessed face. In the hereafter, Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Rahman Rahim. You are enough for us. You are enough for us. When we feel like we have nothing, you are enough for us. Oh Allah, make that a reality in our hearts. In our hearts and in the hearts of our families and the hearts of our children, Ya Allah. Make that a reality for us. And allow that statement, that you are enough for us, to be our protest, to be our hashtag, to be our call, and to be our calling for us to live up to in this life and in the next, forever and ever. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا وأخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا أنت مولانا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you so much, brother. I think for me, from Bilal and on behalf of our community, I just really want to say thank you so much for coming on. It was really a pleasure to get your thoughts. Hopefully you can stay in touch. Definitely would love to.
Let's stay in touch. That's the real action. That's right? The real, you want into action. We need to stay in touch and just love one another and connect with one another and be with one another.
Always remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala too. So, yep. All right. Well, I just want to let everyone know that, be sure to tune in Thursday at 7 p.m. We'll be continuing this series. Again, I just want to say, Jazakallah, thank you so much for tuning in. Assalamu alaikum.